well. And just thinking about the Lunar New Year, of course, all sorts of celebrations, I think, going on around town. Next weekend, we have the Vietnamese Buddhists visiting. It's a lovely tradition that they have to visit 7 temples in 1 day, 7 temples in 1 day for the New Year. And so they're coming next Saturday, next Sunday, I guess, 2 different groups of them. They just come and pay their respects and, and so forth. So I think it's a lovely thing. Perhaps one time we can have a pilgrimage around to other temples. That would be nice. Get to know our fellow Buddhists. And of course, in terms of the New Year, we celebrate the Tibetan New Year. We're always, I think, the last cab off the rank. I'm not sure when the Greek Orthodox New Year is, but we might be a bit neck and neck. I think it's still in January. Anyway, that's on the 21st of February, and we also celebrate then Lama Yeshe's passing into parinirvana. And so that's a big celebration that we have here, Lama Yeshe, who founded our organization, FPMT. And I just wanted to give a forward plug for Geshe Sharab's visit at the end of March. So Geshe Sharab, I don't know if people have met Geshe Sharab before. It's happening at the end of March, as we said. And so he's going to be teaching on the Heart Sutra. Geshe Sharab teaches in English. He was for many years the principal or head of Kopan school, the monks, the school there. And for many years, he's been based in Thubten Nobuling in New Mexico, in Santa Fe, as a Geshe, resident Geshe there, but also tours around for half of the year because there's a lot of, well, now he's back to touring around. So we just have to think that last time Geshe-la was going to come to Australia, it was some years ago now. And then the visa, he had problems with visa, but now he's got a US citizenship thing, so it should be, we hope, clear, smooth, and he'll be here. I would just mention that Geshe Sharab's father has just passed away. I don't have his name, but we can hold him in mind too, of course. So, yeah. Okay. So that's the announcements right at the beginning, so I don't forget. So I just wanted to check, did anybody receive I can see you've got paper copies of the notes, but did you receive them on the email? Okay. Have you got a piece of paper to send around to make sure we have everybody's email? I mean, I know we've had their emails before, but then we'll make sure they come around. Okay. Because I don't see the registrations, but I did pass them on. So anyway, so I will do the general introduction, of course, on All About Karma today. And we're, sort of between now and April, we'll be unpacking this topic more and more. Of course, it's a huge, huge topic. So today, doing more of a general introduction and looking at the 4 parts of a karmic action and giving some examples of that. So on the course outline at the front, you can see there's a whole lot of dot points there. So there's a lot of material. In terms of the readings, well, I'll send that email again. Well, I'll send it, and then you should have received everything if we've got everyone's email. And so we have the regular DB readings that we have. Liberation in the palm has quite a good section, liberation in the palm of your hand. And then there's some other readings that you might like to do, like working with particular negative emotions, healing anger, working with anger. And then some purification ones are from Lama Yeshe, particularly we did here yesterday, the Vajrasattva practice that we do once a month here. So if you want to familiarize with that, that's a good thing to do, come here. We will be doing that anyway as further on in this topic. Yeah, and so then feel free to make any other suggestions for readings and so forth, something that you find valuable. Before we go on with this topic, I just wanted to say that at the end of last year, we missed a couple of weeks of all about, not all about death and rebirth. We missed one because I wasn't well, and then, you know, so we've got two outstanding. So I thought, in the interests of PR, I thought start with all about karma. And then at the end of this module, we'll come back for those people who've been doing the death module. Everyone's welcome, of course. We'll just do a couple more weeks there at the end of all about karma. So just in case you're wondering what happened. I thought that was better than saying, let's start the year with death, you know. Purely in the interest of advertising. Mind you, it might have got more people in, I don't know. Anyway, I think karma is such a comprehensive topic and a topic of interest. And okay, so just looking at this topic, there's a quote here from Arya Nagarjuna. So Nagarjuna was at Nalanda Monastery. We talk about the great scholars of Nalanda Monastery. When we say we, His Holiness the Dalai Lama talks a lot about the great scholars of Nalanda Monastery who we study today. And probably in terms of Nagarjuna, so he was like 2nd, 3rd century scholar. And His Holiness Dalai Lama is often referring to his root wisdom of the middle way. So he basically was presenting, you know, sort of the Mahayana approach that we follow in terms of understanding the subtleties of the wisdom aspect. So that one and other ones like precious teachings of his, like Precious Garland, which also goes through the 6 perfections in great detail. A letter to a friend, which was advice to a king, and so forth. So, you know, he's quite and he's quite well known scholar in our tradition as well. I mean, when I say our, the Tibetan tradition, but following on from the Indian scholars. And these days, His Holiness Dalai Lama is saying to, you know, all the Buddhist scholars or any scholars in India, the academics, you know, this is your country's history. You've got to preserve, you know, this is your legacy. You have to preserve it. So here, this quote from Nagarjuna: all actions of body, speech, and mind created with an attitude of greed, hatred, and ignorance lead to suffering. We could add other afflicted states of mind there, but the 3 primary ones, greed, hatred, and ignorance, lead to suffering. From all actions, created with the opposite attitudes of love, compassion, and wisdom, only happiness comes. So this is for us to investigate through our own experience, through the teachings and so forth. So this, we could say, is a fundamental premise for which understanding karma, based on the 4 Noble Truths that the Buddha taught. Okay. So what is karma? When you hear karma, what do you think? Action. Literally action. Karma's... Huh? Yeah, well, that's correct. The word literally means action, right? Why I said what is karma, because we have all sorts of, I guess it's a word that's used in many ways in the world. Oh, that's your karma. Always seems to be bad, do you notice? It never talks about, oh, that's your karma, great. Never seems to. Anyway, so here we have, I'll just unpack this quote from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So we have in the world the word karma used that can be misunderstood, shall we say. Even as we go along in the you know, as Dharma practitioners in the Buddhist path, can still be misunderstood. And there's reasons for that, which we'll look at. So this quote from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, universe in a single atom. The theory of karma is of signal importance in Buddhist thought. So in other words, it's a warning sign, but is easily misinterpreted. Literally, karma means action, correct? And refers to the intentional acts of sentient beings. So intention or motivation is key. It's the most paramount aspect in terms of karma. We look at all different aspects of karma. And so it says intentional. So that's really, really important, intentional acts of sentient beings. So there's a lot of things that happen unintentionally, isn't it? So I remember Geshe Dawa, who was our first Tibetan Lama at Vajrayana Institute, saying, you could say, we were upstairs in the Gompa, that, you know, you could knock the pot plant unintentionally out the window down onto, and it kills some ant running on the ground below. There's no intention of killing. And so you could say there's no karma accumulated there, right? It's interesting, isn't it? Because there was no intention. There's no intention to knock the thing out of the pot plant down. So these things happen, don't they, every day? Unintentional, right? So the intentional acts of sentient beings, that means humans and non-humans, such acts may be, I was just getting images of animals fighting each other. Such acts may be physical, verbal, or mental. So that's, you know, what we say, what we do, but also what we think. And this is where the whole teaching's about understanding our mind, getting familiar with our mind, and restraining our mind and cultivating the positive qualities, gain some more depth by our understanding of the karmic result of that. Even just thoughts or feelings, even just thoughts or feelings. Good morning. Yeah, so it is said, for example, that if we have a pleasant feeling, that's a ripening of past good karma. All our pleasant feelings or sight, sounds, experiences is a ripening of past good karma. We don't think about that, do we? We don't think of how come good things are happening to me. We only think about how come bad things are happening to me. We've got the expectation the good's going to happen, isn't it? What's your name? Thomas. Thomas, hi. You been here before? Oh, good. Welcome back. Okay. So we're talking about all about karma. Well, about karma. Yeah. So, and so, as His Holiness says, all of this has impacts on our psyche, the psyche of the individual. So it can have a very subtle impact, we'd say subconscious impact on us, that we're not aware of, no matter how minute. And this is another important aspect of karma, that the teeniest little thought, feeling, action, and so forth that we might disregard is actually still has a karmic result. Intentional one still has a karmic result. And if you look at liberation in the palm of your hand, Papanka Rinpoche gives examples like, say, I kill an ant today, intentionally, right? Kill an ant today. And I had the image came to mind when I was caring for my mother, and when the ants would come in, she would get out the spray and she'd say, I know you don't like this, but... So I tried, well, it wasn't hard to get up earlier than her in the morning as she was getting older, but I just find all these strategies of making sure the ants were outside by the time. Because even if you don't know about karma, you still have the karmic, karma still happens. It's a natural law, of course, and effects natural law, and whether you believe in it or not. So killing that ant if I don't purify that, if I think one less ant in the world, which is a bit counterproductive because I can't remember how many gazillion millions there are of ants in the world. There's trillions and trillions of them. So I might think one less ant doesn't matter, but that's wrong thinking. Within 2 weeks, if I haven't taken some action of purifying that, and we'll look at different ways of purification, then the karma of that, the karmic weight of that is equivalent to having killed a human, the karmic weight. Now, you won't be put in prison for killing an ant, right? But the weightiness of that's going to ripen in some future lifetime is the equivalent of killing a human. And then subsequently multiplying, the more we go on without purifying. Which is very sobering thought for, when I reflect back on my life, the number of cockroaches I may have did torture. I mean, there were all those terrible means of killing cockroaches. Just shudder at the thought. Or ants, or flies on that sticky strip hanging down over the kitchen table. Pretty gross, really, when you sit down to a meal looking at dead sentient beings. So there's a lot we can think, even the things we can think of in this lifetime, let alone past one. We've got a lot to purify. We've got a lot going on. Okay, so no matter how minute, that's why that is also very significant. Intentions result in acts, right? Which result in effects that condition the mind towards certain traits and propensities. In other words, we'd say habits. We habituate ourselves. It gets easier the second time, the third time, whatever it is. And there's some habits we want to foster, the positive ones, and there's other habits we really want to nip in the bud. And so all of which may give rise to further intentions and actions. The entire process is seen as an endless self-perpetuating dynamic. So we repeat the patterns over and over again. We repeat it in this life, we repeat it life to life. The chain reaction of interlocking causes, so causes and effects. So it's saying karma is complicated. It's not just, we look at examples as this one thing, doing this one thing and what's the result of that, but there's so much else interconnected with that, so many things going on simultaneously that operates. So when we're talking about endless self-perpetuating, we're talking about moment by moment, in one finger snaps, 64 karmic moments. So we can't catch that, it's too quick. Now, some of those will be positive, some of those will be negative, destructive, and some of those will be neutral, right? But we can't really tell. The extent to which we can tell is the extent to which we've trained our mind. So this effect, cause and effect, so we say it's a natural law. A natural law is one that operates whether you believe in it or not. It's a fact. It not only operates in individuals, but also for groups, societies, and not in just in one lifetime, but across many lifetimes. So, for example, over the past few years, it's been the human karma of the world, of humans, it would seem only, to be affected by COVID, right? So it's not of the animals, insects, birds, all of these, it's the humans. So it's a shared human collective karma, right? Now, it doesn't, so we've all created whatever causes to experience that at this lifetime. So we could say everything that happens. There's nothing that happens unintentionally. It's all got some karmic cause to it. Hidden to us mostly, but yeah, okay. So can you think of other examples yourself that come to mind of karmic consequences for groups, for societies, for, yes. Families, yeah.
As in, we've spoken about this, like in my family we have a lot of war veterans and we have a lot of motherless men. And whether it's Venerable Chokyi was saying people in the family haven't gone to war. That's just a simple.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, my oldest brother, who was supposed to go to Vietnam, well, he was called up. He was a conscientious objector. And my father didn't go to war because he had a dicky knee because of football injury. So we could say, oh, that was good luck. But the Buddha says there's no such thing as good luck. There's good karma. Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes, President Trump, yes. So when this was before he was elected. It was the election time, actually. We were on retreat with Lama Zopa Rinpoche in North Carolina. And the very first question that came to Rinpoche, because Trump was on our American friends' minds at least, who's going to win the election? You know, could you tell us in advance? Or will Trump win? I can't remember, you know, but basically that's what they were asking. And Rinpoche said, America, or we should say USA, because there's North America and South America, has the presidents it has the karma for. The world has the leaders it has the karma for. And I find that really, really useful, because instead of blaming that person, because it's so easy to blame them if you don't agree with them, and you know, we all just put the blame on the one person, which is pretty unfair. But instead of that, you realize, oh, this is actually our karma. If, you know, it's also our karma if we get someone we do like. But be careful of rejoicing in the one losing who you don't like, because that's also negative karma. Be careful of that. Yeah.
Are you taking questions?
Yes, go. I take questions anytime. Yeah.
Because the way I'm thinking about it now is like, so here's the ant, and it's the equivalent of a human being.
If not purified in 2 weeks, say.
So,
or the karma of it, yeah.
So is it like if you kill a human being?
Yeah, what would that be?
That's the question, but then I come back and I think, well, maybe this is just about equality. Killing is killing. It's not better or worse. It's just the whole.
Yeah, it is true that killing is killing. It's taking a life, and why is taking the life of a living being? So we say any living beings, you know. Why? Because every living being has Buddha nature. I mean, just on that level, has the potential for Buddhahood, right? And so it's like we're playing, well, you can't play Buddha, playing God, if you like.
It shocked me a bit when you said that. I think, well.
I know, we think, ants, really? Yes, not to mention the mosquitoes, yeah.
So I feel superior, you know, like
True.
I'm a better life form.
Well, we do, yeah, there are situations where if you have to choose, I can't think of one where you choose between an ant and a human to save their life, but but there can be examples where it is. Like, for example, I'll give you a different example. I remember when the Dalai Lama was teaching in Sydney, the Kala Chakra, and we had a panel after each day, which was wonderful, with all these Buddhist knowledgeable elders. And the question arose about abortion, right? Or not, yeah, that arose. Forget that aside, put that aside. Because the actual question was, if a mother, like a mother in childbirth, and you have to decide to save the mother or the child, the baby, which one do you save if there is such a dilemma? And it's the mother. Why? Why do you save the mother? Because she's already got an established life, if you like, and the potential's greater. It's interesting, isn't it? So if you, the potential's greater, you don't, and medically, I believe this to be true, you know, you say, if there was a having to make a choice, terrible choice to have to make, do you save the mother or do you save the child, the baby just born? Then you save the mother, because she's got an established life force greater than what the baby has. Now that can get very technical, and let's hope we're never in any of those situations. I think with our medical knowledge and so forth today, procedures, that you don't, I hope, hear of those situations. Had it this week.
What actions would be taken positively by negative karma? If it's your own negative,
it's your own. It's your own. That's your parents, grandparents, ancestors. That's their karma, not yours. We don't experience someone else's karma.
So experience that.
Yes, yeah. They experience the result of their actions. We experience the result of our own actions. So
our actions
no, your actions won't result to your children, but being a role model for your children and teaching them. No, not karmically. No. And that's very important. For example, in my family, again, you know, we can say my mum and dad gave us, our mothers and fathers gave us the body. The mind is our own. This is in the Buddhist presentation. So our mind came in there, so we can't blame them for, you know, stuff in our own mind. Maybe we can blame them if it's something genetic. Good to know that. It's good to know that. Can't blame mum and dad. You brought your mind with you. In fact, the Buddha said you chose that rebirth in a way. So it's easy to blame others. Yeah. Okay.
I was just about to say, when you're talking about like pregnant women giving birth, because often you hear stories and they'll say, "Oh, don't worry about me, save the baby." But like to say goes against.
But that mother saying that is saying that out of great love. So that's a virtue.
Okay.
From her side, she's expressing virtue. Doesn't mean you have to literally do what the mother says, especially when she's, you know, probably on drugs, things in that situation, being sedated and whatever. The medical procedures will proceed as they do. Yeah.
So there's a lot of tests for pregnant ladies to know that whether the child is healthy.
Yes.
Having Down syndrome or something.
Yes.
So what if the mother takes the decision to actually abort?
If the mother takes a decision to abort, why?
Yeah, because having Down syndrome, then the mother probably thinking of the life for the kid going forward.
Yeah.
But be tough on them.
Yeah.
So what if? Yeah.
Okay.
What kind of karma would that be?
Okay, so I'll give the answer from a Buddhist perspective, because that's all I can do here, is that, so life in the Buddhist presentation starts at conception. Right? So that's the beginning of the life, the sperm and the egg, plus the mind, which that we bring, that's in there. So we say from conception. And there's a whole lot of debate in terms of abortion and when you can and when you can't and so forth. However, given that every being has Buddha nature, including someone who might have Down syndrome or so forth, has Buddha nature, then and from a Buddhist perspective, you wouldn't abort. That's the Buddhist perspective. You wouldn't abort. That's taking a life. And that's intentional killing, right? And so that would, yeah, from a Buddhist perspective, you wouldn't do that. Very easy to say when you're not the one thinking about, you know, life ahead and so forth. And this is where the Buddhist perspective is about looking long term. Karma is about like we experience the result of karma generally. There are some exceptions, not in this life, but in future lives. And so even being in that situation, you could say, is some past karma, whatever it is, ripening. And yeah, we treat every situation like that. So it is tricky because we have the same situation with euthanasia as well, where, and more the laws are changing to allow euthanasia because we say we can't bear to see the suffering or having that person suffer. And again, from a Buddhist perspective, Buddha, the Buddha presents that, well, we don't know what the karma of that person is. Like karmically, it might sound cruel, but that if it's better for that person to experience that suffering in a human form, rather than having that karmic fruition cut, so that then they experience worse suffering in future lifetimes. So this is generally not how society thinks, right? But from a Buddhist perspective, that's the advice people would be given. This was 3 questions.
Question to what I asked before.
Yep.
Say for 1 year baby, newborn baby having cancer or something, whose karma is that?
The baby's.
Baby has not done anything wrong.
But it's still that being's karma to have a cancer. It could, okay. Okay, so we've got to look at it again, longer perspective than one life. So for example, I've used this example before. When I was in hospital and had pneumonia and I was missing Choden Rinpoche's teachings, and it was the first time he'd come to Australia. And so I was in Sydney, I was in hospital, feeling sorry for myself because I wasn't at the teachings, that I was in hospital. And Geshe Thubten, who was my teacher at Vajrayana Institute, when I finally occurred to me to ring him, he said, I was just about to ask Rinpoche, and I got the message from Rinpoche saying, better than eons of hot hells, like experiencing that pneumonia. And I was very, very sick for a month, in and out. Well, I was very sick for longer than that, but in and out of hospital that month. Complications, all sorts of things. And he said, better than eons of hot hells. Now, as a Buddhist, I can think, yeah, I'd rather, we say, purify it by having this sickness in this life than experiencing worse suffering of hot hells, eons of hot hells. That's a very Buddhist presentation, right? So we would say that, so we don't blame a child for having cancer. As you said, it's not like cancer's punishment. It's having a particular body, having a human form. Just look how many people have cancer in the world, a lot increasing. And so what we'd say is that could be ripening of some past karma, some past negative action or so forth that's ripened as illness in that baby, right? And but then it might be their karma to have cancer, but you don't just say, oh, well, it's your karma to have cancer, goodbye, because we do everything that we can. So they're the conditions that come around. You can also have the positive conditions. Oh, we know how to treat that, blah, 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 blah. A previous life. We don't know which one. A Buddha would know, but we don't know. I think
you were talking about taking the knowledge, and you were talking about feelings. How does it work for animals when you actually have to put a pet down?
Yeah, it's the same. It's difficult. You're taking that life because we don't know, again, with the pet, what their karma is to purify that in this life. It's better to hedge your bets that way. But people, like fellow nun whose dog, it was February in Sydney and we were having heat waves, dare I say heat waves, nothing compared to WA, which is also some of our environmental karma. But anyway, so the dog was taken to the vet and spent the day at the vet's, and they couldn't sufficiently rehydrate or whatever. And so then they advised going to the dog hospital or whatever, the dog hospital or
Hospice.
the veterinary, the hospital basically, went to hospital. So once that dog went to that hospital, they said, we can't do anything for the dog, and either we can keep the dog in hospital for X amount of time and you pay these high bills, or we're going to euthanize the dog, right? So that's your choice. You cannot take, from that situation, she couldn't take that dog home. We weren't allowed to, right? So we were both there, so I'd advise people not doing that. And so she had to make the decision, right, to have the dog euthanized. However, conditionally, we were both there, we're doing all the prayers for the time of death and so forth and so forth. So you can say there was some mitigating, there was certainly no rejoicing of having the dog put down. So when we look at the different aspects of karma, there's different aspects to it. So, no, you can't.
No.
We can practice, we can do practices that if we could, we would take on the suffering. But look, Jesus Christ was nailed on the cross to take on the suffering of the world. Did that work? No. The Buddha, out of great compassion, can't bear to see suffering, all the Buddhas. So if they could take on all the suffering, they would take it on themselves. So we do practices, and that enhances our compassion and our caring concern for beings, which is benefit to us and hopefully a benefit to others, but we can't take away their suffering. We can use whatever medical means that we can, but we can't actually, relieve them of the root suffering. Yeah.
I'm kind of interested in the whole mindset thing. It feels like the root of where you go with it. Like we have a certain mindset in the country about X, Y, and Z.
Yes.
But I personally have a mindset about me and the end.
Yes.
And tonight.
Yes, me and my aunt friend.
Well, I have to get more friendly.
Yeah, you have to get more friendly.
But if I kind of wheel back, it's all to do with that sense of that we're imbued with, that human beings are a superior life form on this planet. It's almost in our
Yes, we tell ourselves a good story about how we're the superior, exactly. And we can say that. Well, I guess we can say, because it is true that as human beings we have superior intelligence, right? So we have the capacity to do amazing things that other beings are limited in their capacity to do.
I don't think I can do what an ant does.
Exactly. Exactly. But we do have to look at, their skill, their community building skill. In fact, their caring concern for each other. As I watch these ants, I'd plugged in the bathroom in my little hut at Chenrezig Institute, and there was this hole they were coming in through. Because about this time of year, it's ants occupy. And there was a sink in the bathroom and a sink in the kitchen. I was, okay, you can have one or the other, but not both. I've got to have access to one, Anyway, I plugged up this hole in the wall where they were coming in. And I watched the ants, and they developed a new trail, and they went back and got their mates and going, oh, she plugged up that one. You've got to come up this way now. It was so wonderful to see their caring concern for each other and their people, their community, their fellow ant community. So it's very good to look at yeah, what other beings can do that I can't do. You know, the sonar, you know, systems and all so forth. Many, many different things. It's helpful for us to reverse that sense of superiority, which is what you're saying about. But given that we do have superior intelligence, what better way, as we say in the Buddhist presentation on the precious human rebirth, than to use it for the best possible way for the benefit of all beings, yeah, not just the humans. That's the thing. We have to relearn. Yvonne, and then you're, we are, whichever way.
To come back to what's the need today with you, but I'm concerned about learning about karma. How do we make sure that we develop compassion for people and just think, oh, people are poor, it's their karma, we don't have to worry about them or
No, that's not compassion fatigue, that's indifference, or at the best indifference. It's disregard for life.
A long time ago, when I was in my 20s, someone said to me about karma. I still remember that, oh, women, you don't have to worry about, you know, equal rights for women, because if you help with karma, then the next life you will be born as well.
Oh, well, that's very interesting, that whole thing of you will be reborn as a male, and that will be good karma. Now I'm just checking our numbers here in the room. I mean, our male friends here may say, well, I don't know if my karma's any better than yours. It's all individual. Yeah, it's a rather bland statement, a facetious statement, and a misunderstanding of karma as well. So even that has came in, whether it was early or later, into the Buddhist system. So we have the story of Tara, who, as Yeshe Dawa, when she was, you know, she had gained realizations and so forth, and she was in this monastery. And it is said that the monks said to her, oh, it's a shame you were born in female form, right? And so you should pray to be reborn as a male. Now, that's not the Buddha's teaching. The Buddha equally ordained males and females, fully ordained and so forth, equally regarded all life. So it didn't come from the Buddha, it came from social values or whatever, beliefs, cultural beliefs. And that's where she made the commitment to always, you know, once attaining Buddhahood or a certain level of bodhisattva, always come back in human form, in female form, always in female form, to show that male, female, no difference. So we can say these are the attitudes that we might say, what are the attitudes within society that don't fit with the presentation of karma? Not to just accept the presentation of karma without all these questions. It's great to have all these questions because there's always, well, what if and this? And it's very complicated, right? It's really complicated. So it's great to have these questions. So you can just think that person didn't have an understanding of karma. Or, I mean, how did you feel when they said, don't worry about it, just, you know, you can come back as a male? Good, it was rubbish. Sorry, guys. It's not rubbish to come back as male, but we can also see with our, you know, reincarnate beings who have control over life and death that can decide their rebirth. Someone like the Dalai Lama. He said different things at different times. And of course, we know he said he might come back as a female. It's going to be whatever's most beneficial in the world when you're at that level to be able to choose. So it's not like male, female, what's better, what's worse, what's going to be most beneficial. Yeah. And yeah, it was rubbish. Okay, you got that. Venerable Youngson.
I was thinking again of like a baby answer, because I used to think the same way. I used to really worry about like babies who were sexually abused. And you think, oh, again, you think, oh, I'm 4 innocent, I haven't done anything. But as I've also thought about my not good stuff in life, I realised that it was things I've done in previous lives have meant that I needed to be born in a family that was not kind. And so again, you know, babies that are, or kids that are murdered by their parents or, you know, abused and everything, it is their karma, which of course doesn't mean we go, oh well, tough. You know, we still do what we can to help, because wherever there's suffering, we should be feeling compassion.
Yeah, it sounds harsh to say, oh, that's their karma. And that's, I'm not saying it's incorrect. I'm just saying it sounds harsh if we think about just one lifetime. But the more we develop an understanding of karma, it's not a blame game. It's not, oh, well, that's your, you know, it's not dismissive. It's not, it's seeing, oh, that's the result of suffering. And of course, in the examples you're talking about, child abuse, sexual abuse, murder and so forth, there's still accountability in society for that. It's not saying, oh, well, that's their karma, so don't worry about it. It's absolutely not. There are, it's not acceptable in society. And you could also say the perpetrators, that's their karma, that's their habituation from previous life to killing or to abuse or so forth, and they're repeating it again and again and creating themselves more negative karma, which you wouldn't want to have the result of. So we can use it to develop compassion. It's very, very, it's a bit of a minefield, isn't it? A bit of a minefield. But it's thinking about it in a, and it's very, it's very difficult if we get into the thing about it's not fair. And absolutely, on a conventional level, it's not fair. But if we think, okay, there's some karmic result, let's hope that they've purified whatever that was. And like in your situation, your family, Venerable Yangchen's a very kind person, so her family gave her the opportunity to learn kindness big time.
Yeah, and the other thing, like to take responsibility and not blame. And I'm saying this is the work of a lifetime, not a quick fix, but yeah. It's not exactly a gift, but you can work with whatever happens.
Okay. Right.
It's also quite complex. Like that is the role that it helps us to deal with things that we can't explain, that we can't mention. If we look at it and for me, I think, and like, okay, there is meaning behind it. I think it's maybe the most important. There's no random.
There's no random. That's true. No, it's not. It's not a. That's what I was saying. It's not a punishment. You know, like. And when I was in the Philippines, for example, and there was earthquakes and landslides and all sorts of things happening, and the Philippines being, as it was then, about 98% Catholic, what's God got against us? And you just think, that is not a helpful way of thinking, you know. It's not God going, well, I'm going to give you, it's humans that create the conditions for those, you know, destructive elements, things like that. So, yeah, it can be reassuring to know that it's not random, that there is some order to things, some explanation beyond our knowledge to things. Yeah. Yes.
I'm just interested in, you said earlier about the role of intention.
Yes.
In relation to karma.
Yeah.
So we've talked about a few different examples. One of them that Colin mentioned about euthanasia.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I'm wondering what the difference would be about just your intention behind that, like in terms of the genuine caring for another, like another animal. Yeah. What was running through my head earlier was another example where, like when my mother was alive, when I visited her, I'd clean cobwebs and stuff off around her house. Yeah. And she'd say, but what about the spiders? You know, she was very concerned about the spiders. Yeah. Job. Is there any difference between like then, when I didn't really know about say karma as much,
the karmic results of say killing, if I accidentally or deliberately would kill any spiders.
Yeah.
Mentioned now, with my knowledge, is there any difference in terms of the results being?
There were I think the difference in the examples that you gave, like as you said, accidentally killing or maybe unaware. So there was no intention to kill the spiders, presumably. There was no intention there to kill the spiders. Whereas now, because you've got a little bit of more of a framework and understanding and probably more care in
Maybe the action is prevented.
avoiding killing the spiders. However, if you did kill, there'd probably be more, or not necessarily, intention. If there was more intention to kill, knowing what you know, you could say that intentionality has a heavier consequence, particularly if we've taken vows of not killing.
Yeah.
Then it has a heavier consequence. Yeah. And the opposite is true. Saving that life also is heavier in the positive, from the positive side. Yeah. 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 Good. Okay. $8 million hits on how to kill spiders. Oh, we've got a rather imbalanced world, haven't we?
And this is from someone who does save spiders.
Well, just think, every saved spider is a very fortunate spider. And if you save them, and like here, was it yesterday? I think we had the, or the day before, putting, was that a spider? It was some insect anyway, putting it in a container to take it outside. And it's even better, excuse me, if you, sorry, even better if you've got a container which has Buddha images or mantras or so forth, and you sort of escort it outside and give it a few blessings along the way. Yeah, it's very nice to do. Okay. Right. So, all right. So we can see, yes. No, don't be sorry. Never be sorry. Questions are great. Yeah. I don't know.
So are we talking about relative and absolute levels here as well? In terms of, my question is then, how is karma neutral?
Yeah, so we will be looking at that. We call that all the purification practices. So just to have in mind right now, advertisement, the Buddha said there's no karmic, like negative action that can't be purified. I realize that's two negatives in a sentence. No negative action that can't be purified, right? So anything, no matter what, no matter how terrible, can be purified. So that's the good news.
I'll say some good questions for you.
No, it's great. Oh, yeah.
I feel like karma is that sort of classic Buddhist concept that it works on so many different.
Yes, it works on very different levels.
And everybody, I think, has to come to terms with their own way to build up an understanding of what karma is all about.
Yes.
But what would you say is like the most important thing?
Intention. Intention's the most important thing. Everything follows from that, right? So, yeah. And then, you know, being aware of our intention. And so how we become aware. So anyway, so we'll go on a little bit with that. So I've got, how many types of karmic action are there? I think we've pretty much answered that by all our permutations, a lot. So we can look at, you know, the importance of understanding karma is really where we really start to practice the Dharma. So in the general presentation in the Lam Rim, the Graduated Path to Enlightenment, this is presented usually after refuge. And here we're having it presented before that, and that makes sense as well, you know, that when we contemplate impermanence and death and realize, oh, you know, death can come any time. I want to have the most virtuous mind possible. You know, then it makes sense to look at how karma works. So that's what we're doing here. So there are many different types of karma and effects of karma, which we'll be looking at subsequently. And so really keeping in mind, as the examples that people have brought up in the questions, is this key thing of, you know, how does the Buddhist understanding connect with, of karma, connect with our lives? And so we're using examples from our lives and saying, how does this work in terms of karma? How does that work in terms of karma? So it's really, really important to understand the relationship there, or begin to understand the relationship. It is true that, you know, the Buddha said, I always think it was to Ananda, but some of the commentaries say to Shariputra, that only a Buddha understands karma fully. Only a Buddha understands karma fully. So if we get confused along the way, just relax. Unless you're a Buddha, in which case don't relax, and you'll know, you can tell us. And that was in relation to the, you know, the story of the old man who wanted to ordain and came to Ananda or Shariputra and requested ordination. And they looked at him and couldn't see any good qualities in him and sent him away. He persisted. He went to the Buddha. And the Buddha, out of his clairvoyance, could see in a past life, he had been a fly. You know the story? Some of you know the story, you're nodding. So he had been a fly on a bit of cow dung on a cart that went around a stupa. Now there's different variations of that story as well. But by the positive karmic imprint, even as a fly going around a stupa, not knowing what a stupa is, the magnitude of that multiplied to arise in this request for ordination, right? So even those of us who are ordained don't know where that impetus came from, except we know it grew and grew in our minds and so forth. So here he was. And so the Buddha, having seen that, ordained him and turned around to Ananda and said, only a Buddha knows karma. And so don't think you know it. Anyway, okay, it's complicated. But we can, but there's a lot that we can understand, yes.
You could equally say the Buddha nature of the fly.
Yes, the Buddha nature of the fly.
Came together with the perambulations of the stupa.
Yes.
And whatever happened between the two.
Yes.
So it isn't like there isn't anything.
No. That imprint on that mental continuum, which was subsequently in this old man, previously in the fly. And so that had grown and grown and grown to fruition, you could say, in that lifetime of being ordained. The wish to be ordained, and actually then being ordained.
I suppose I'm saying the mental imprint is different to the nature, but maybe it's not.
Well, you could say the Buddha nature, yeah. I mean, we don't know what happened in subsequent lifetimes of that fly either. They're meant to. Well, we say it's on the mental continuum that goes lifetime to lifetime. But yeah, that Buddha nature, you could also say that Buddha nature of that old man was awakened by the presence of the Buddha. Pretty powerful stuff. That you have the karma to be in the presence of the Buddha and get teachings from the Buddha is pretty amazing. Yeah, for any being. Right? So a lot of different aspects. It's true. Okay, so what benefits are derived from understanding and accepting karma? So we've already said there's nothing random or just luck. Oh, it's your good luck or it's your bad luck. No such thing, sorry. because that doesn't account for anything. So it gives a sense of order. This is what you were saying, Yvonne. Give a sense of explanation to our experiences, to what we experience. It also acts as a prescription for avoiding future suffering, because we know what it's like to suffer. Thank you very much. I've had enough of that. What can I do to avoid it? So that it's not, we could say, just keep in mind, in a way we say karma is fixed, but in another way, it's not permanent, right? And so what are the ways for us for achieving future happiness? What can I do right now? Future happiness, whether that be this life or future lives. And as that, it becomes a basis for Buddhist ethics. So we look at, for example, the 10 non-virtues. I was going to start on that today, but I don't think we will. Basically learning what to practice and what to avoid, particularly then when we take vows. We take vows, no killing, no stealing, no lying, no sexual misconduct, no intoxicants. We take vows, whatever level of vows, and protecting those, which is a foundation for our Buddhist ethics. So keeping in mind that this is topic is often presented, as you'll see in the Lam Rim presentations, after the one on refuge. It's like, now I've taken refuge, what do I do? Okay, this is what to avoid, this is what to do. Get on with it, okay? So is there really such a thing as karma? That's a good question. Some people would say, oh, no, it doesn't matter, just whatever. You get away with things, you get away with them. If you don't, it's bad luck. I think that attitude's there. So we talk about there being obvious, slightly hidden, and very hidden phenomena. So something like understanding the certainty of death is very obvious. It's a gross level of impermanence, we say. And then we say a very subtle level of impermanence is moment by moment change, which we can't see, but nonetheless happens. And so karma is put in that category of very hidden phenomena. At one level, we get it. You know, you do something positive, it gets a positive result. You do something negative, it gets a negative result. We can give examples. We can give examples from our lives, from our experience, or from others' experience. And at one level, we get that. But these subtleties, like with the fly on the old man and getting ordained, we can't see that.
I was wondering how, say that there's the Good Samaritan and something bad happens to them, how that fits in.
Well, yeah, a Good Samaritan, something bad happens to them. What would you say from a karmic point of view? You'd say that's ripening of something from a past life?
Even if they're doing a positive action. Okay. I was thinking there's
if they're doing a positive action and they get a negative result, yes, that's a ripening of past karma.
Okay. I was thinking there's a murder trial happening at the moment, like gentleman that thought about his bicycle was stolen and he caught the thief and the thief stabbed him and died.
Yeah. So he had the karma to be killed.
Okay.
And it's nothing to do with what was happening in that circumstance of this lifetime. That's where we get caught up.
Okay.
Because we're looking at it from these immediate circumstances.
Unrelated.
It's unrelated. He might have killed, dare I say, an ant in some past lifetime.
Not just a tormentor.
I'm connecting it in with examples that will maybe, yeah. I know, I think karma is the tormentor that sort of gets you shaking in your boots. Yes. There are five ones, well, 5 ones of immediate retribution, but even that says that immediate retribution is next life without the intervention of killing your mother, killing your father, killing an arhat. So how do we know who they are? Drawing blood from a Buddha, because you can't actually kill a Buddha, with malicious intent, not with good intent. He might be doing a transfusion, I'm not sure. And causing a split amongst the Sangha, turning Sangha against Sangha. So it says without the intervention of another life. But I think we can see, I can think of an example, for example, this guy I saw in prison. He was on suicide watch in Long Bay and went to visit him. And as part of the Liberation Prison Project, we never ask anyone what they've done to end up in prison, but often they want to talk about it because they feel so bad about it. And he was definitely feeling bad about it, which was why he was on suicide watch. And so he said, he was drunk, had a fight with his girlfriend and killed his girlfriend, right? And then he pulled up his T-shirt and said, "This is what I did to myself," immediately afterwards. And he had a big gash from here to here, right? And it's like you could feel that pain. He was tormenting himself. That's a hellish existence, you would say. So he was already experiencing a hellish existence as a result of having killed his girlfriend, for sure. Now, whether that's the immediate karmic result of that or of some other collective, sort of karma that led him to get drunk, that led him to have the fight and so forth, and be that sort of person in his life. So this is where it gets complicated. Yeah.
Will he have that negative karma as well, because he has the intention of killing himself, and that's also
It's taking a life. It's taking a life. Yes, he will have some negative karma there. He didn't actually commit suicide. If he did, this is interesting, in the karma of killing. So the karma of killing, we'll do more on this next week, but the different aspects is that, actually, yeah, I did intend to get to this, we might. You've got to have the basis of the one to be killed, and the one to be, this is the karma of killing. The one to be killed is a person other than, or a being other than yourself. A being other than yourself. So this is for karma of killing. And so, yes, you have the intention to kill. So you could say he would have that one. He doesn't have the first one. He has that one. He had the means, planned it, did the deed, say he did the deed. He didn't actually kill himself, but say it was someone who did. And the completion of the act is that they die before you do. So you didn't have number 1 and number 4, right? It doesn't mean, if you've got to think, if somebody commits suicide, what's the state of their mind? Also, if we were talking before about euthanasia, and you don't know what karma is, is to be played out to ripen in this lifetime, and you've shortened that. So there's all sorts of other karmic fallout, but it's not precisely the one of killing. Nonetheless, it is said, taking your own life, you will end up in the hell realms. No, and it makes sense because your mind has to be already, let's say, in a hell realm to do that. Let's say, yeah. Although we did have with it's hard to know actually, people's state of mind. The self-immolations, like in Tibet. And there was a monk unfortunately, at Nalanda Monastery in France. And you just got to think, okay, your intention in the beginning may have been a sort of positive one to raise awareness about what terrible situation and so forth. But can you imagine as you're burning what your mind would be doing? It would be huge suffering, has to be.
Is there any different when you start with sacrifices of the hours? I think there's a story about the Buddha being a prince and he sacrifices.
Yes.
Like 2 tigers that doesn't have to eat fox at all.
Yeah, there's the tigress or lioness, whichever you prefer, and the cubs, and the Buddha in that lifetime being a prince who saw that she was contemplating eating her cubs because of starvation. And instead, you know, sort of, I don't know, slit his own throat or cut himself, so that he offered himself to her. He dies in that life, that Prince dies. And she gets saved and the cubs get saved because they all have a good feast. That's a Buddha. So at a certain level of bodhisattva, you can say, you know, even a first level bodhisattva can emanate 100 bodies and so forth. So there's a level of which, as a bodhisattva, it's inconsequential to you, like doing something like it is inconsequential because you emanate these bodies and it's not like taking a life. So it's prohibited to do that unless you're at that level, by the way. So, yeah, if one is at that level, one would know. But if you're not at that level, it's reassuring, don't you think? And
Sacrifice is not called for.
that self-sacrifice is not allowed. It makes sense, doesn't it? You're going to be much more benefit to people being alive than you are going to be by taking your own life. Really? Come on. You could say the intention was one of compassion. Maybe the wisdom aspect was on holidays, but the intention was one of compassion. So that mitigates from an intention point of view. So we, you know, as we'll be looking at subsequently, there's different heaviness of karma as well, dependent on intention, basically, mainly. Yes.
I was also thinking, like, when you're flying, like you're supposed to put on your own face mask
Yes.
before you help somebody else.
Yes, put on your mask first before the others.
So it's sort of that parallel.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So in answer to, is there really such thing as karma? We have to check up to from our own experience, isn't it? So we can, you know, sort of draw conclusions from our own experience of actions bringing results. And even though we say that the results aren't necessarily experienced in this lifetime, we can see that generally, if I train my mind in virtue and love and compassion and so forth, I'm having a happier life. Yeah. If I'm training my mind in anger and revenge, ill will, and it's turmoil in there, let alone whatever comes out, but I'm having a very unhappy life. So we can easily draw that conclusion, aren't we? Yeah, everyone's nodding, so I guess that's right. And so we can look at that, not to look at other people and going, oh, that's their karma, because we can get very indifferent about that, and we don't want to do that. We can look at however, we can look at examples and think about, oh, I can see that karma could have a role there. For example, I remember one time when the bushfires in the Blue Mountains, and this whole street, every house was burnt to a cinder, except one, not touched. How did that happen? So you would have to say, karma has to play. It's those situations where we can't explain by any other means. The fire can say, well, the wind went this way, that way, that way, that way. It's just like, how come one house got saved when all the others? So we hear situations like that, like in landslides where people get pulled out of the rubble after they should be dead, right? We could say, well, it wasn't the karma for them to be dead at that point. Or it could be the opposite. You know, at the time of the Buddha was of the Chokyi clan, and all these clans fought with each other. And there was one soldier who wanted to avoid being killed, and so he went AWOL. And he was in this field, and the field caught on fire. He burnt. He died. So you could say his karma to be killed was there, no matter where he ran to. You know, his karma for this life had run out.
Think about Job, though.
Think about who?
Job.
Job in the Bible. Remind me, with the soul?
With goodness, how many sufferings and stuff.
Yeah. And remind me the story of Job. I did. I mean, I did grow up Catholic, but I've forgotten.
Well, basically, you know, God rained down all these things on him
On Job.
to, in some way, test his,
Yes.
his faith.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying,
And did
is
he
often-
and did he pass the test of his
Yeah,
faith? He did. Okay.
he was so patient.
He was patient. It taught him patience.
Yeah.
The patience of Job. Okay.
But I think, yeah, I mean, good training, patient.
Yeah.
I think the thing that I'm saying is that many people, even my niece at the moment, seem to be afflicted in ways that are not explainable.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then they can sort of get a whole mindset around, which isn't necessarily helpful. I don't quite know where we're going with this now.
Bad things happen to good people and all of that. You know.
No.
Why me? Why this?
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
can get into this whole
Yeah.
thing of not-
We do get into this because this is so hidden. We don't understand, and it's not fair, and you know all of this. So we do get into that, and it's not that it's not fair. It's just like these things happen in life, and I don't know your niece's situation, but where possible, to be able to use it as a means of developing resilience, to developing inner qualities, like the patience of Job, that perhaps we wouldn't have developed otherwise. Now, I guess you're not about to go and talk to your niece like that. I wouldn't probably, but to see there's, you know, there's, it's learning to deal with life on what presents, isn't it?
Well, I think really what I'm sort of emphasizing, and this is what brought me into Buddhism,
Yeah.
is the fact that Buddhism is good philosophy.
Yeah.
It seems to explain
Why things happen. Yeah.
And why everybody is experiencing the lives that they're experiencing.
Yeah.
No.
Yes, and it's punishment from God, and just like I think it's a bad rap from God. For God, it's not a good verse. God gets blamed for stuff when it goes bad, and praised for when it goes good. That bit's fine, but you know, I think it's unfair on God and it's unfair on people. You know, it's not a punishment. It's just these things happen, but not just they happen karmically. From some other lifetime, or maybe from over a number of lifetimes, and it all seems to be ripening in this life. Like a friend of mine a couple of people come to mind. One is, if there's going to be a rare disease, she will get it. It's just like, of course, a couple of us, you know, a couple of her friends, well, of course she would get it. If anyone was going to get it, it'd be her. But from a Buddhist perspective, I have to think, well, you're purifying so much in this lifetime. Now, she's not Buddhist. I wouldn't say that to her. You support and do whatever you can. Another friend of mine who was not Buddhist, but she did ask me, what would the Buddha say about, you know, chronic mental, physical illness? What would the Buddha say? I'm not about to say, well, the Buddha would say that you've harmed a lot of people in previous lives and this is how it's ripening for you now. And I'd say, well, the Buddha would say that you're a very loving, compassionate, kind person, because all of that was true, right? All of that was true. And you're dealing with difficult situations, which is also true. But it makes, you know, it was like, what do you call it? Pretty much bedridden, but still able to be of so much benefit to others. I did worry about her obsession with dogs because I thought, oh gosh, you're going to be reborn as a dog. That's she spoiled dogs, everybody's dogs, including her own. So it's like saying, giving us a totally different perspective on things, a much wider perspective that is not just about this life. Because if we always just focus on it's about this life and look at it literally, we just torture ourselves with that, really. Yvonne?
Can give you a spaciousness, much more
Yes,
space
much more space, yeah.
around what things that happen
Yeah.
in your own life and also in this is fine.
Yes.
I don't have to get so.
Yeah. And to think that, okay, if I don't want to have more suffering like this myself, not talking about other people, then I have to create the causes and am creating the causes. Look at where you are now on a Sunday morning, afternoon now, in the Dharma Center. Amazing, creating amazing causes for, you know, great bucket loads of merit. But we can't see that either, but it is happening.
I was going to say, I came to Buddhism when my husband was very sick, and he had a big problem that he had chronic pain, and he saw it as meaningless. I bounced home from the Buddhist center after a course, and I was saying to him, "Oh look, you're exhausting me with karma," and he wasn't a Buddhist at all, but that really helped him just to know that there was reason. That even though the pain was difficult, it had a meaning.
Also, I think, you know, in the Jewish beliefs, in sort of like, oh, great, repaying another karmic debt. When you think of the history of what, you know, Jewish people have gone through over the last century, you know, there's a lot of karmic debts repaid from their side. I'm not sure about the other side. Yeah. Okay, so I think best thing is looking at examples from our daily experience. But I just want to finish on this final point, which is on based on extrasensory perception. I just have to say, for me, this is what convinced me of karma. No, I don't mean I've got any extrasensory perception, but how I interpret that is, you know, that deja vu feeling. When you know I haven't been here before, but you feel I have been here before. Only karma, only an explanation of karma does that for me. Well, I must have been here before in some previous lifetime, you know, must have been here before. I don't remember it, but there's that familiarity, you know.
My question then, I once went to a psychologist and I said, I have this very strong feeling that I have these issues that I shouldn't have, because there's nothing in my life that justifies me having this issue. So is that, I thought that must, the only explanation I had was that there must be some karma.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Yeah.
That I'm like that. Nothing has happened to me in this life that warrants this response.
Yes. Yeah. So that's helpful, having the Dharma perspective to say, nothing in my experience in this life warrants this, so it must be from past life. Yeah. Must be. I'm not a Buddhist, but must be. Makes sense to me. So I think, look for explanations in your own life that, whether it convinces you or not, but gives you more a sense of, yeah, well, I think this thing about karma must be the only explanation I can have here. Okay, final one.
Think of babies. Even when they're born, they're all so different. I think only karma can explain.
Yeah, that's true. Babies are also different, even twins, you know, very different from each other. They bring their own little personalities along, it's true. Or the continuity of consciousness does explain that. Okay, well, that was a very broad and fruitful discussion. Thank you very much. We will dedicate. And we've got everyone's email right to make sure. Okay, good. Page 16. Through the merit of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. So in dedicating like this, we're sealing all this positivity we've generated, all this virtue we've generated here together, so that it doesn't get wasted and only grows and grows and grows. So that's good karma, isn't it?